The Shavtar represents the 10 different incarnations of Vishnu, which were taken to save the earth and its living beings from destruction. This video will narrate you the story of the first incarnation of Vishnu, Matsya. The first avatar of Vishnu is in the form of a fish. Vishnu took the form of Matsya to rescue the Manu, the first man as per the Hindu epics, from a huge destruction. Once King Satyavrat, the real name of Manu, was performing a sacred ceremony beside a river while scooping in some water from the river to offer the Surya, the sun god. He accidentally caught a tiny fish in the palm of his hand. Satyavrat was ready to release the fish back into the water, but the tiny fish requested him not to throw it back into the river as the river had bigger fishes that would prey upon it. To save itself from other predators of the sea, the fish requested the king to take it along with him to his palace, convincing him that his palace would be safe and big enough to accommodate a small fish. King Satyavrat took a pity on the little fish and took it with himself to his palace. Upon reaching there, he put the fish into a small bowl. The king was happy and satisfied that he was able to save the life of this little being. The next morning, Satyavrat came back to check on the fish and was surprised to see that the tiny fish he had brought with him had grown large enough to fill the entire pot. Its size had become so large that its movement inside the pot became restricted. The fish requested the king to place it in the larger vessel as it would not be able to survive in this pot for long. The king agreed and transferred it into the largest vessel he had. But the same night, the fish had outgrown the size of this vessel too. The fish requested the king to move it to a place big enough to ensure her survival. Satyavrat immediately ordered his servants to carry the fish into a pond. For the movement, it seemed like the fish would live there happily, but the very next morning, Satyavrat was shocked to see the fish outgrow the size of the pond. This time, the king transferred the fish to the largest lake of his kingdom, but in no time, the fish outgrew the lake too. The king had no other option but to drop the fish into the ocean from where he originally rescued it. He apologized to the fish that despite being a king, he could not save her or provide her enough to ensure her survival. As the fish was dropped into the ocean, its size knew no bounds. It grew beyond the Satyavrat eyes could see. At this point, Satyavrat concluded that this was not no ordinary animal, but it had to be a divine appearance of God. Satyavrat apologized for thinking in his pride that he could save every living being on earth. He offered his prayer and requested the fish to reveal to him the ulterior motive behind his form. The Matsya took the form of Sri Vishnu and blessed Satyavrat. Matsya told the king that in 7 days a huge devastation in the form of flood would engulf the entire earth, killing almost all the creation. Matsya ordered the king to call the 7 sages and gather sample of herbs, seeds and all forms of life to repopulate the earth upon the destruction was over. Matsya promised Satyavrat that it would send a boat to save them, and with its help they would be able to survive to begin the new cycle of Yuga. The king, upon understanding the orders of Matsya, began working on gathering everything as told to him. After 7 days, as Matsya had predicted, huge clouds appeared in all directions and began pouring on land and sea. The huge waves from the ocean flowed into the land, becoming one with it. Soon there was no land in sight, and the entire earth was flooded with water. Then Satyavrat, with all his companions, saw a large, mysterious boat floating towards them across the waves. Remembering the words of Matsya, Satyavrat onboarded the seven rishis, animals, and all his belongings and himself on the boat, finding some safety. Soon Matsya appeared there with the snake Vasuki. Vasuki tied itself on the boat on one side and held onto the horns of Matsya on the other side. Matsya, with the help of Vasuki, towed the boat across the water of devastation. For countless days, darkness covered the world, and they wandered across the stormy ocean, waiting for the water to subside. During their journey and days of patience, Vishnu, in the form of Matsya, preached King Satyavrat and the seven sages the spiritual knowledge of the Vedas. Thus, Vishnu, the preserver from the Holy Trinity, was able to save mankind and brought them into the new era, the beginning of Satyuga. Satyavrat came to know Manu, that the first man, and the seven sages who accompanied become the Saptrishi, going on to the repopulate to earth.